You don't need revenge. You don't need to chase, beg, or explain yourself anymore. Because the ones who ignored you, doubted you, left you for dead, they're coming back. But not with pride in their eyes. They're coming back crying. Not because you broke them, but because you rebuilt yourself without them. There's something powerful about silent transformation. While they laughed at your struggle, you were growing. While they ghosted you, you were getting stronger. While they walked away, thinking they'd replaced you, you were rewriting your entire reality. You didn't shout. You didn't announce your healing. You just became different. And now the very energy they abandoned is rising, glowing, untouchable. That's the moment they come back. Not to check on you. Not out of guilt. But because your elevation has exposed their emptiness. They thought you'd stay the same. They assumed you'd always be available, waiting, wounded. But you didn't. You stepped into your worth. You remembered who you were before they confused you. And instead of trying to prove something to them, you proved everything to yourself. That's why they're returning in tears, not because they lost someone else, but because they lost you. And now your silence is louder than every word you ever said. You didn't chase them when they left. You didn't beg for closure. You let the door shut, not knowing that their own footsteps would bring them back one day, haunted by memories they can't erase. Because while they thought they upgraded, they realized too late. The real value wasn't in who looked best in pictures, but who stood by them in their darkest hours. And that was you. But by the time they understood, you'd already moved into the next version of yourself. You were no longer touchable by the hands that once took you for granted. There's something magnetic about a person who chooses peace over performance, who rises without applause, who stays grounded while everything around them tries to shake them. That's who you became. They come back crying, because they feel it now, the weight of what they threw away. The warmth they traded for cold games, the love they treated like an option, and that pain they feel. That's not your burden. That's their awakening. You don't need to get even. You just need to keep becoming. The person who once doubted you will never forget how it felt when you became the version of yourself you always should have been. Your glow now burns through their excuses. Your strength makes their regret echo. They can't escape it. That's why they're watching you now, not with curiosity, but with remorse. Not with pride, but with tears. Because life has a way of circling back. And when you rise in silence, the world is forced to witness the very thing they once overlooked. They thought walking away gave them power, but it gave you space. And in that space you found clarity. You found healing. You found yourself. And now when they return, they won't recognize the energy you carry. It's too big, too sacred, too refined for the old games they used to play. They'll remember the version of you they left behind, and they'll look for them. But that version doesn't live here anymore. You've evolved, elevated, escaped. They are coming back crying, not because they loved you right, but because they loved you wrong. And the cost of that mistake is etched into their reality now. The messages they never sent. The calls they were too proud to make. The apologies they rehearsed but never voiced. It all catches up. Not because you wished them harm, but because you finally wished yourself well. And the universe heard it. The echo of your healing became thunder in their world of silence. So let them come. Let the tears fall. Let them speak the words you once begged to hear. But don't return to what broke you just because it's now regretting your absence. You're no longer the version of yourself that can be fooled by tears. You see clearly now. You love wisely now. You move differently now. And those who didn't value your presence will have to learn to live with your absence. Because healing doesn't mean welcoming them back. Sometimes it means watching them cry as you keep walking forward. You didn't shout about your pain. You didn't beg them to understand your value. Instead, you went inward. You sat with your silence and rebuilt yourself in the dark. You stopped needing to be seen and started focusing on seeing yourself clearly. In that stillness, your transformation took root, not loud, not dramatic, but powerful. While they assumed you'd remain broken, you were mastering peace. You turned confusion into clarity, rejection into redirection, and wounds into wisdom. No need to announce anything. You let the results speak. That's the kind of shift they never expected. You didn't send them updates or explanations, you simply became. And now, as they come back searching for the version they left behind, they're met with someone unrecognizable, stronger, and lighter, and no longer accessible. That's the weight of quiet growth. It can't be ignored, even by the ones who once did. They didn't notice you when you needed them most. They overlooked your efforts, downplayed your loyalty, and walked away thinking you'd always stay soft. But pain has a strange way of creating power. You didn't become bitter, you became better. And now that light they once ignored radiates from every part of you. It pierces through their pride and blinds their ego. You no longer chase closure because you are closure. The way you carry yourself, the way your eyes no longer search for them, it's haunting. They're not crying just because they lost someone, they're crying because they finally see what they left behind. The love they mishandled now stands tall, not waiting, not hoping, but walking forward. And every step you take is a mirror to their mistake. They don't miss who you were. They miss who you became in their absence. They thought walking away meant winning. That silence meant indifference. But they didn't realize silence becomes louder with time. While they explored distractions, the echo of your absence grew louder. It haunted the rooms they walked into. It echoed in the smiles that didn't feel right, because no matter who stood beside them, no one felt like you. They didn't miss you immediately, no, that came later. It crept in during quiet nights when their pride had nothing left to defend. Suddenly memories weren't just thoughts, they were aches. And now they're crawling back, not because they planned to, but because the weight of losing you finally crushed them. The love you offered freely now feels like gold they threw into the fire. And they return not with confidence, but with regret soaking every word. Because the space you left behind became a void they can't fill. You didn't have to curse them, compete, or retaliate. You didn't need to prove how wrong they were. You simply healed, quietly, deeply, with grace. That was the greatest revenge, not revenge at all, but redemption. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped showing up for people who couldn't show up for you. And instead of feeding their ego with your pain, you nourished your own soul. That's the part they can't handle. You didn't fall apart like they expected. You rose with a calmness they don't understand. And now that you're shining in ways they never supported, they come back crying, not because you punished them, but because life did. You chose elevation over resentment, and in doing so you become untouchable. There's nothing more powerful than peace earned through pain. They return now. But your silence is the only answer left. What they regret isn't just losing you, it's how they treated the version of you that loved them deeply. They remember the texts they ignored, the calls they left unanswered, the moments they chose someone else. At the time it felt justified, but now they replay every dismissal like a loop they can't escape. You didn't become cold out of revenge, you became wise through experience. You learned what not to give freely. You realized that love isn't about losing yourself. And now that you've found your voice, your boundaries, your life, they come crawling back. Because they see now what they were too blind to recognize. They weren't ready for the love you gave. And their tears don't come from missing the old times, they come from facing the truth that they weren't worthy of the heart they once had access to. You stopped waiting. You stopped replaying the conversation, stopped reading into their silence. You didn't need their apology to heal, you gave yourself one. And the moment you shifted from seeking to surrendering, everything started flowing. You no longer moved from emptiness, you moved from overflow. That's when alignment began. New people, better energy, clearer vision. And now the ones who left sense it. They can't explain it, but they feel it. You're no longer who they abandoned. You've become someone even they admire. But admiration isn't enough. You've outgrown the old versions of love that made you shrink. And while they come back crying, drawn to the strength you now embody, you realize you no longer desire the same connection. What you once chased, you now attract, not from ego, but from evolved self-respect. They remember you, but they don't recognize you. The version they loved or thought they had power over is gone. You don't flinch at their name. You don't pause at their messages. Your nervous system no longer reacts. That's how deep the healing went. They thought time would make you forget, but time made you flourish. And now they're chasing a ghost, a reflection of who you used to be. But ghosts don't come back, they ascend. So while they cry and reach for familiarity, they're met with distance, not coldness, but clarity. You're not bitter. You're just unavailable for anything that costs your peace. They may speak with tears, with regret, with trembling honesty, but you listen without attachment. Because love doesn't live in memories, it lives in truth. And the truth is you've moved on. Letting someone cry doesn't make you cruel. It means you're finally choosing yourself. You're not punishing them, you're protecting your peace. There was a time when their tears would have broken you. Now they're just reminders of how far you've come. Their apologies don't undo the silence. Their regrets don't erase the damage. You can feel compassion without reopening the door. You can forgive without forgetting how deeply you were once dismissed. Growth doesn't always look like reconciliation, it often looks like walking away with calm resolve. You're not closing the door to punish them. You're keeping it closed because you've opened a new one for yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is let them cry while you smile, not in mockery, but in peace. Because you know now your love was never the problem. Their ability to handle it was.